welcome back. Today's video is going to be on starting ADHD medication as an adult. So starting with the diagnosis itself. So the adult ADHD service in the UK on the NHS is really oversubscribed. There's a waiting list of sort of 2 to 3 years just to be assessed. So early on I made the decision that I was going to go private for my diagnosis. So I started by reaching out to a local ADHD clinic and tried to get myself an assessment, and they managed to book me in within sort of 2 to 3 weeks. Before the assessment, the clinic itself asked me to get a couple of my family members to fill in like some assessment forms which kind of detailed my emotions and behavior from sort of childhood through to adolescence. And then during my actual assessment itself, the person assessing me, the psychiatrist, asked me a lot of questions on what it is in particular that I struggle with. So whether that be my focus and concentration, keeping up or following the track of conversation, and sort of forgetfulness in daily life generally. I then received my diagnosis at the end of the session, and we agreed that I was going to be starting treatment relatively immediately for ADHD. So moving on to the titration phase and the types of medication. I was initially started on Concerta, which is methylphenidate, and almost immediately I knew this wasn't for me really. I became really irritable, moody, my emotions were really up and down, and I was way more lethargic and forgetful than I was pre-medication. We made the decision to move on to lisdexamfetamine, Elvance, and I was started on a dose of 30 milligrams. Straight away it was completely different to Concerta. I saw some immediate benefits with regards to my focus, concentration, memory, mood. I just felt like a completely different person than both when I was on Concerta and pre-medication. My dose of Elvance was then titrated up over a period of say 2 to 3 weeks in order to find kind of a sweet spot. The max dose that I think I went up to was about 60 milligrams, and I was getting quite a lot of side effects that I didn't want, sort of racing heart and sweats. I'm communicating with the psychiatrist this whole time, and we eventually decided that the agreed sort of sweet spot was 40 milligrams. It was where I saw the most positive benefit with the fewest side effects. So now moving on to this kind of period post-diagnosis and post-titration period, and I've kind of labelled this as the phase of getting my life back on track, because I'd found that after I started this medication and found the right dose, there were so many things in my life that had become out of control. I found my life was so disorganised generally, and I had no structure or purpose to my days whatsoever. And I noticed that over the years my day had really shifted to the right, and what I mean by that is that I'd go to bed at sort of 2, 3, 4 a.m. and then wouldn't wake up again until 2, 3, 4 p.m. the following day. And I found that after starting Elvance, I finally had the energy and the motivation to get up at a decent time, which meant that I was then ultimately tired again at a good time that evening, which doesn't seem like a massive thing really, but for me and how disorganized my life was back then, just having that structure and routine of getting up at a relatively regular normal time and going to bed at the same time meant that my life kind of then slotted in quite well to a work day. I then had some motivation to put some structure into the hours that I was awake as well. So I looked into the best ways to do this, and I found that over a period of some sort of trial and error with different methods, that to-do lists and meditation are the two biggest things that add structure and repeatability to my days, and some predictability to what's going to come up and what I'm going to go through on a day-to-day basis as well. And that might not seem like a massive thing, but me just knowing that what comes up during the day I can cope with, I've coped with it before, I can do it again, I'm safe to try things and fail. It was a massive turning point for me as well. And so moving on to the impact that this had on me as an adult, I felt as though I learned loads about myself during this phase, and I was looking back and thinking and wondering how I'd ever functioned prior to this. And at this point I was finally optimistic for the future as well, which is something that I kind of didn't think possible. It was a really weird time because I almost couldn't imagine my life before starting medication anymore. It seemed like a completely different me. I was so aimless and pointless before starting medication that this really felt like such a massive turning point in my life. And for it to have happened as an adult seemed almost impossible, I guess, because I would have assumed that I was so set in my ways and unable to change that this was kind of just me. I had to live with it. And so I went through a period of just feeling really grateful that I'd gone through this now at 27-ish. I was grateful that I went through it then rather than in my sort of 30s, 40s, 50s, where I potentially would have wasted so much more time. So that's kind of just a brief synopsis of what my experience was like of being diagnosed with ADHD as an adult. As always, I'd love to hear any of your experiences or if you're about to go through this assessment, so do leave any comments down below. Anyway, as always, thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.